What about you? Very welcome. Well, the world's media pivoted further east during the week as Israel launched this attack on Iran. Unlike some, I do not believe this was a diversionary strategy by the IDF to take attention away from its genocidal attack in Gaza. The reality is the Israeli government and the military, they don't seem to need to do that, as they've never given a shit what anyone thought about their actions. Apart, of course, from their financial and military piggy bank, the USA. I highlighted a few weeks ago the slaughter of starving Palestinians trying to find food at one of the now US and Israeli-approved Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF, stations. There's a misnomer, if ever there was one. That slaughter has continued daily, with starving men, women and children shot down by the IDF, leaving a total of over 500 dead, as at the time of this video. The reason for the attack on Iran was an example of military opportunism, nothing more complicated than that. Having practically wiped out Iranian proxies such as Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Syrian regime in the shape of Assad, Netanyahu saw an opportunity to attack Iran. He was hoping to bring about such instability among the Iranian population that they would rise up and oust their present government. That doesn't show any possibility. And so, quietly aided by both the US and UK governments, the IDF launched a wave of missiles into Iran. The excuse or premise for their attack, of course, was that Iran was on the cusp of having a nuclear bomb. This is a claim Netanyahu has been peddling, would you believe, for over 20 years. And here's the proof.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to do it.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade.
Ladies and gentlemen, time is running out.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
Now, while there's no doubt Iran has ambitions to have a nuclear bomb, most informed observers say there's still some way off achieving that ambition. What we do know, however, is that Israel, in contravention of all nuclear non-proliferation laws, haven't only developed a bomb, but have multiple nuclear bombs armed and ready to launch. We only know this due to the bravery of the Israeli nuclear technician Mordechai Vanu, who, imprisoned in Israel for revealing details about the country's nuclear weapons program, suffered 18 years incarceration. He was arrested and tried for treason. They finally released him in 2004, but he continues to face restrictions on his freedom of movement and communication since that date. So much for the supposed only democracy in the Middle East. When a journalist had the courage to point out the blatant hypocrisy of the Israeli position to an Israeli politician, this was their response.
Why should the world tolerate you having nuclear weapons and not, say, Iran?
First, again, we never admitted to have such weapons. But the very comparison is, I must say, it's very insulting, and I tell you why. We suffered one Holocaust. We listened to our neighbors.
Is it because of the Holocaust that you should be allowed to have nuclear weapons?
You know what? This interview was finished now. Your attitude is so hostile, and your questions are so arrogant, I don't want to speak with you anymore.
Must be nice to have such a thin skin that you can choose to walk off when asked a hard question. It appears that some Americans are beginning to wake up to the truth about the Israeli claim of victimhood.
And now that Tehran sent a message back They're screaming for help like a child who lit the fire and got burned by the flame. Oh, now it's a tragedy. Now you remember what a hospital is. You bombed over 200 hospitals in Gaza. You hit a children's hospital in Iran. You blew up ambulances, dialysis centers, maternity wards. And now you want sympathy? Let me say this loud so the world hears. You didn't just bomb buildings. You didn't just kill civilians. You targeted the ones who were trying to save them. You murdered medics, unarmed, brave, rushing to save a life. And you killed them in cold blood. Then you buried them in their vehicles, like criminals hiding a murder weapon. You didn't just kill people, you erased the proof. You buried mercy under the rubble, and now you ask for compassion. Here's the part that burns deeper. The world has been watching a live stream genocide for 2 years, on every screen, in every language, from every angle. And now, after 2 years of watching you bomb children with American missiles, you expect the people to feel something for you. You got some nerve. You want tears. Tell that to the mothers digging their babies out with bare hands. Tell that to cancer patients gasping for oxygen as the hospital walls collapsed around them. You want sympathy. You had 2 years of global silence, and that still wasn't enough for your bloodlust. You've been had. You've been took. You've been hoodwinked. The world was hoodwinked into believing you were victims while you turned cities into cemeteries. You don't get to cry now. Not after you made mourning a crime in Gaza. You don't get to scream now. Not after you silenced every voice that dared to say enough. You bombed hope. You buried mercy. You murdered truth. And now you want the people's pity. We don't mourn for war criminals. We don't cry for colonizers. We cry for the silence, for the crushed, for the medics you left in the dirt. But something's changed. The world sees you now. The veil is off. The lie is dead.
They're also beginning to question the amount of aid siphoned off the US public purse and the Israeli coffers. For example, every day $10 million goes from Americans' pockets into Israel. Today, even staunch Trump supporters are questioning this policy. One example being Tucker Carlson, who did a train wreck interview with prominent Trump supporter and pro-Israeli advocate Senator Ted Cruz during the week. This is what Cruz had to say regarding the Israeli lobby group called the Israeli American Political Action Group, or AIPAC. This lobby group is one of the most well-funded and successful in Capitol Hill, funneling money into the campaigns of Israeli leading US politicians such as Cruz.
So I've never taken money from the Israel lobby. Have you?
Taken money from the Israel...
From AIPAC.
So AIPAC raises a lot of money for me, but it's actually a misnomer because the people who raise money are individuals. Right. So it's not the PAC itself, but they're individual members who believe in the American-Israeli friendship and relationship.
Is AIPAC a foreign lobby?
No, it's an American lobby. It's the AIPAC stands for the America-Israeli Political Action Committee.
What does it lobby for?
So, to be honest, not a whole lot effectively. Listen, I came into Congress 13 years ago with the stated intention of being the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate.
Great.
And I've worked every day to do that. AIPAC, a lot of times, AIPAC, I wish were much more effective. Like, there are folks online who are in the fever swamp of terrified of AIPAC, and AIPAC...
I'm not terrified of AIPAC at all. You're the one who seems a little uncomfortable when I'm asking.
No, not uncomfortable at all.
I'm just asking what AIPAC does. My understanding, having known a lot of people who work at AIPAC, is that it lobbies on behalf of the Israeli government.
Wrong.
Oh, okay.
It's objectively
when was the last time AIPAC took a position that deviated from Prime Minister Netanyahu?
All the time.
Name one.
Okay. Let me go back and give a little history. If you want to do a deep dive on AIPAC,
I don't. I want to do a shallow dive that gets...
No, I'm not going to do a simple...
I want to get to the core question. AIPAC is lobbying for a foreign government. And it's not.
No.
It's lobbying for the United States.
It is lobbying for a strong U.S.-Israeli relationship.
Okay. So it has nothing to do with the foreign government.
It wants America and Israel to be closely allied.
Okay, but it's lobbying on behalf of the interests of another country.
So that's not true at all. And if
it's not true.
No.
How much contact do you think AIPAC leaders have with the government of Israel?
No idea. I imagine some. I think the government of Israel is often frustrated with AIPAC because AIPAC's not nearly strong enough.
Do you think there's any coordination between the government of Israel and AIPAC?
Do they talk? Sure. If you're lobbying for more U.S.-Mexico trade? Would you talk to people in the U.S. and Mexico and the government? Sure.
So I'm not mad about that. There are a million countries that lobby Washington. I like a lot of those countries, including Israel.
But AIPAC are Americans. They're not Israelis.
Hold on. There are tons of Americans who lobby on behalf of foreign governments. I know them. I'm related to some of them. I know how it works. I'm from here. So my question is not, is it outrageous that foreign governments lobby the United States? They all do, okay, including Israel. My only question is, why don't we admit that is what's happening? You're denying it, but it's true.
Yeah, and why aren't you're saying is false.
Why aren't they registered as a foreign lobby?
Because they're not.
As the world waits to see if Trump will weigh in militarily to support the Israeli attack on Iran, the gormless Cruz lets slip that the U.S. is already doing just that.
To kill General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
You don't believe they're trying to murder Trump?
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really believe that...
We're carrying out military strikes today.
You said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here, because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity.
No, we're not bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
We are supporting
Israel.
Israel.
High stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war with Iran right now, people are listening.
Okay.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
He went on to demonstrate his complete lack of knowledge about Iran. This is good.
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah.
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay, this is cute.
It's not even... You don't know anything about Iran. So
okay, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who
don't know anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything.
You'd think knowing the population would be a starting point if you're going to invade a country as a U.S. senator. But he did restate his unwavering support for Israel based not on geopolitical concerns nor even American-centric concerns. But wait for it. I think we'll identify this bit here. He supports Israel because the Bible told him to.
Growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of it, says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my... You pull out the phone and use the Google.
It's in Genesis. So you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it and you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology? I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker.
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two...
Well, hold on.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But what... Hold on. Define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
And so is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the
God's
descendants of
referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
One thing we did learn from the attack on Iran, especially the assassination of a high-ranking general, is that if they want to, the IDF have the capacity to put a missile through a bedroom window, killing their target without damaging even the flats above or beneath. This raises the question, why was it necessary then to flatten most of Gaza? This video shows what the strip looked like before and after the IDF assault. Of course, most of us only find out what's going on in the world by watching the news. And most of us do that with no critical questions being asked. We presume what we're getting fed is the truth. Well, during the week, we had yet another example of just how biased the BBC's reporting of the Gazan conflict has become, after they refused to broadcast a documentary they had commissioned called Gaza, Doctors Under Attack, excusing that by saying that they had impartiality concerns. This from an organization which has forever tarnished its journalistic credentials by slavishly following a pro-Israeli agenda and selectively reporting the conflict to skew the public in that direction. Now, while BBC executives seem impervious to growing public criticism of their coverage of the Gazan genocide, world-renowned journalist and documentary maker Peter Osborne pulled no punches when he questioned BBC executive news director Richard Burgess when he appeared on a panel at Westminster.
Now, we cannot understand the events of October the 7th without the Hannibal Directive. A full understanding of that. You've never bothered to tell your viewers and listeners. Now, Haaretz has reported it, Yeriot has reported it, the Israeli papers, ABC News, the United Nations, but the BBC. I would love to know why you have never reported, never mentioned it once on that. Question number one. Question number two. This report reveals that the BBC has only once, in passing, mentioned Adahia, and you cannot understand what is going on in Gaza, has been going on for the last almost 2 years, without knowing that the Adahia doctrine is an official Israeli doctrine which licenses indiscriminate destruction of civilian assets, including people, in order to terrify the other side into resistance. The BBC has never once mentioned, except in passing, why not? It's a grotesque omission, I would have thought, but I would love to get your explanation. We now come on to the fact that to begin with, the BBC scarcely reported the genocidal comments made by the most senior Israeli politicians, including, never apparently, according to this report, the Amalek remarks, the genocidal remarks of Netanyahu. So you never educated your audience about the genocidal remarks, and according to this report, on 100 occasions, you've closed down references to genocide by your guests. This makes you complicit, by the way. You're part of these immensely grave matters. You, the BBC, become complicit in them. Bear that in mind. I just want to mention one other thing. And I can't believe what I'm going to say. This figure of 6%, 170-something journalists murdered by Israel. BBC's only bothered to report 6% of them, whereas you dutifully reported 60% of Ukrainian journalists. Do you agree with David Landy that there are no journalists in Gaza? You were saying you had your own people. why, I would love to know why you only report it, because I find it, as a journalist, as a human being, actually. And now I'm going to ask you, on this pipeline in a second, I'm going to ask you one final question. Well, it's simply amazing. We have in Britain the leading historian of Israel. His name is Avi Schlein. You won't have heard of it because you've never brought him on your channel. Avi Schlein is the leading historian. He's written more authoritative books about the history of Israel than anybody else.
There was a lot to unpack from that journalist. Well, firstly, he raised the fact that the BBC have steadfastly refused to give any historical background to the present conflict. Like, imagine trying to explain the Second World War without reference to the First World War, the Treaty of Versailles, or the Great Depression. But that's exactly what the BBC has done. They've presented a conflict which, if you only watch the BBC, you'd think began on October the 7th, 2023. Osborne then asks why the BBC only once, in passing, mentioned the Israeli policy of indiscriminately attacking both Palestinian buildings and people in their attempt to terrorise that population into submission. He went on to ask why the BBC hardly reported the genocidal comments of leading Israeli politicians, including Netanyahu. You don't have to look far to find those clips where a top Israeli minister said that, yes, he was going to cut off all medical, water and food from the population in Gaza, something they have subsequently done while the world remains quiet. Osborne then states that on over 100 occasions, the BBC closed down guests on their shows who made reference to the Israeli genocide in Gaza. He goes on to say that the BBC have only reported 6% of the 107 journalists murdered by the IDF, compared to their reporting 60% of journalists killed in the conflict in Ukraine. Finally, he asks why the world-renowned historian and expert on the Middle East, Professor Avi Schlein, has never appeared in the BBC. Not once. Now, for those of you interested in learning more about this world-renowned professor and historian, I'd suggest you look up a video on YouTube called Manufacturing a Monster, Britain, America and Israeli Violence. I'll say that again. Manufacturing a Monster, Britain, America and Israeli Violence. The very title of that video, I'd argue, is the reason the BBC has refused to have Professor Schlein on, whilst it has given hours of screen time to the Israeli ambassador to the UK, which she has used to excuse the atrocities being perpetrated by the IDF. The one positive in the partisan refusal of the BBC to broadcast the documentary it commissioned is that Doctors Under Attack is now, their producers are able to offer that documentary to other broadcasters and allow the world to watch what the BBC will not allow you to watch. Now, it would be unfair to paint all broadcasters in the UK with the same brush. Like staying on the story of the Israeli systematic murder of medics in Gaza, here's how a real journalist, Channel 4's Krisham Guramurti, held the Israeli Foreign Minister, Sharon Haskell, to account regarding a now infamous incident where the IDF executed one by one 15 Palestinian paramedics and rescue workers in cold blood.
I don't think you really understand what's the true nature of those radicals, of those jihadists, if you continue to actually, defend them.
No, I'm not defending anyone, Sharon. Don't put any words in my mouth. I'm asking you.
But you
I'm
do.
asking you. No, I'm not. I'm not,
when
and
you
it's very important you
propagate
accept
some
that.
of their propaganda.
No, I'm not
When you-
propagating
when
any
you
propaganda.
take-
I'm asking you questions,
when
Sharon,
you-
and you can
when
turn
you
this around into
actually-
your talking points, but you've got to address my questions. My question
Well,
is...
I am addressing
no, you're
your
not.
questions.
No, you're
I
not.
don't-
You're just
I
attacking.
don't think
you are
get
just
what we're
attacking.
actually experiencing
No, you're
here.
just attacking. And that you know, we've got to try and get beyond that, because 7 days ago, civil defense and PRCS ambulances arrived at the scene of Israeli attacks. One by one, they were hit, they were struck, their bodies were gathered and buried in a mass grave. And now,
So the first
that's
thing
not
I would
Hamas.
say, I would ask you who actually investigated this event. And I would tell you, most likely it is Hamas, because OCHA won't be on the ground investigating it. So when they get their information from Hamas, a death-cult terrorist organization, as I said before, I won't take it just with a grain of salt. I would take it with a shovel of salt. I would wait.
Having shot them, every one of those rescue workers and medics, the IDF then brought in bulldozers and buried not just their bodies, but the ambulances they were in a pathetic attempt to hide their war crime. What they did not know is that one of the medics had filmed everything that happened on his mobile phone before they shot him. Personally, as I've said before, I no longer watch BBC News with regard to Gaza. Instead, I watch Al Jazeera News or Channel 4 News to get an uncensored and unbiased view of the Gazan conflict. I would suggest you all do the same. As the Gazan conflict spills out into a regional conflict due to Israel's attack on Iran, we're supposed to feel sympathy, some sympathy for war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu, as he stands on a mountain of his dead. Seemingly, his family have also paid a high price for his many wars. No. Not that any of them have died, unlike the 50,000 killed in Gaza, nor have any been left with life-altering injuries, like over 100,000 in Gaza. No, wait for it. His suffering in his family was the fact that his son has had to cancel his wedding plans on 2 occasions.
אני מאוד מעריך את זה. כל אחד מאיתנו נושא מחיר אישי. זה לא פסח על המשפחה שלי. כן, פעם שנייה שבני אבנר, בגלל איום טילים וירי טילים, מבטל חתונה. זה בוודאי מחיר אישי יקר לו, וגם לארוסתו ולמשפחתנו.
God bless the poor man. May the evil bastard rot in hell. As Donald Trump's America turns ever more like an Orwellian nightmare, with people of color being dragged off the streets by balaclava-wearing ICE agents, we had one instance where they picked on the wrong people of color. They pulled over 2 American originals, 2 indigenous Americans, 2 who were there before everybody else, before any white face had ever been seen. So these ladies let the ICE agents know exactly how big a mistake they had made.
You a citizen?
We're first ones.
We're Native American. We're the first ones.
Oh, perfect. Perfect, huh? What are you? What are you? Are you an American citizen? No, you're not. You're not a firstborn. You're not from this land. And neither are you. Not from this fucking land. Got you on live. And your skin is brown as ours, fucker. We didn't cross the border crossed us. Get the fuck out of here. Fucking 3 of...
Ain't that beautiful? Sometimes things just work out. Things just work out. But I'll be honest, I would not like to be walking the streets of America without a big white face like mine, as that all seemingly it takes these days to be thrown against a wall, kidnapped, and held against your will until you can prove that you're an American or white.
You'll do nothing. You hear me? You'll do nothing.